All right. Hello and welcome everybody to our September 15th APCHA meeting. 2022 is around the corner, which is concerning. We got a lot on our agenda today. We are hybrid if you're watching at home. Cindy, would you read the roll?
Yes. Rachel?
Here.
Francie?
I'm here.
Allison?
Present.
Carson?
Here.
Skippy?
Present.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
And Kelly?
Yes. Here.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So we'll start today with public comment. We don't have anybody in the room, but there may be people online. It's an opportunity for 3 minutes, anything not on our agenda. So I would just ask if anybody is present to give public comment, please unmute yourself and state your first and last name. And we'll give this just a minute because there's oftentimes a little bit of a lag. Last call for public comment. That's just Diane. Okay, great. Okay, so seeing none, we will close that section of the meeting. And we had a little bit of a change here. So before executive director's comments, which are normally now, we are going to have a presentation, APCHA by the numbers. For those watching at home, Home Track was one of the greatest accomplishments of a previous board and really helps bring APCHA into the 21st century and allows us to better understand how our current housing stock is being utilized, by whom, and it's a great tool of transparency. So this is really our first presentation of some of the fruits of that process, and we're really looking forward to it.
Hi, I am Andrew Miller. For those of you who do not know me, I've worked with APCHA for the last 3 years. The last year and a half has been in the capacity of business analyst. And we're going to go through basically a 38-page document on some reports out of Home Track that I've pulled. And the purpose of this kind of presentation isn't necessarily to showcase every bit of data that we have in the system. It's meant to be kind of an overview, a beginning of kind of what we have available and what we can start reporting out on for you. A few things just to note, if you do have some additional reports that you're looking for, we did create a Google form for a report request for the board members. That is in the packet. I do believe Maddie, I think, emailed that to you guys. So there is a link directly to a Google form. The only thing we ask is that you just do one data request per form. You are able to submit multiple at once, but please only one at a time so that we can make sure we can get through those requests in a timely manner, as well as give you the metrics you're looking for. A few things you'll notice in this report is that it's centered around unit counts, general ownership and sales information, and then what we have available for affidavit responses as of September 13th, so Monday. So we're going to go through basically 4 different sections. One thing you'll notice isn't in this specific presentation is specific rental information. We'll be doing a rental survey in early 2022, and so after we do that rental survey, similar to this presentation on affidavit ownership, we'll be able to come back and make sure that we have all that verified information as well. Other thing, just one last thing before we jump right in is when you're looking at unit counts, just as a heads up, it doesn't include the accessory dwelling units or the caretaker dwelling units in these unit counts as of today. We're working with both the City of Aspen Community Development Department and Pitkin County and getting some information verification. We'd rather give you good data rather than I think this is what it is. So just as a heads up on some of that. So I think you guys already made me presenter, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will jump right into it.
And can I ask one clarifying question?
Yeah.
So understanding that caretakers and ADUs are not part of this data set, is everything else, so whether it's everything else, RO to category 1, APCHA managed to non-APCHA managed, ownership to rental, all of that?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Help me on how to share my screen. I have not seen it on mine.
Right there.
Oh, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I should know how to do this. All right.
Over there.
So you should now be able to see my screen. Let's make this full screen for you.
Control L.
You got it. All right, so page 1, we'll just give you a table of contents. I'll let you peruse that at your own leisure. Here's kind of that same introduction I went through. I just kind of very briefly talked through this, but if you want a little bit more specifics, it is right on that page. First section we're going to talk about is APCHA units by the numbers. So in the first report we're looking at, this section is talking about how many units we specifically have, and then how many properties are based around those units. So what this graph is just showing is that our system has 277 properties, and then in those 277 properties, there's 3,122 units as of yesterday when this report was built. Again, with the caveat, not including ADUs, CDUs in there. Some notes. In home track, a property means a housing, rental, and or ownership, a complex that contains at least one unit. So some of these properties are singular unit properties as well. We just wanted to make sure we're taking stock of both the property level perspective as well as the unit level perspective. Each of the reports are going to have a filtered section just so you can understand what the filters I put in these reports are. So they're all going to look pretty similar to this, but just to give you a quick explanation on what this means. Unit property record type is a terminology within HomeTrek, and that is just saying it is either a property would be the record type or a unit would be the record type. So this is saying that it equals either property or unit. So it's showcasing in this specific report's properties and units in it. And then I also filtered out some specific naming that we have in our property and unit names. As we are still on a maintenance contract right now, we are continuously doing updates to the systems, so there are some units named HomeTrek, there are some units named Test, there are some units named Duplicate in there. I didn't want to showcase that in this data subset, so that is some clarifications on there. The Phillips Mobile Home Park does not have a formal deed restriction placed on it, so those are also not included in this data subset in any of these. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. So this is a breakdown of APCHA units by category. So the graph is just showcasing the record count of all those different categories. This is across ownership and rental. As you can see, our highest number is in the RO category. We have 896. Our next would be category 3, in which we have 724. This blank category means that there's no associated category within HomeTrek as of today. It is part of the data cleanup. As with all good data, it continues to get refined. So we're working towards getting those 61 units to have some clarification. Some of those are those one-offs that are a little bit more challenging that we didn't have in a digital format before, other than its name and address. So we have to drill down into the paper deed restrictions to find that information. Some other clarifications. Category 5 includes what used to be Category 6 and 7 when those ownership units sold. When they resell, they would be sold as Category 5. There are about 18 units that have been rolled into that, so that's just a little note on that one. LIHTC here are actually these 3 categories are units at Truscott 2 and Aspen Country Inn, so these are APCHA managed units. They stand for Low Income Housing Tax Credit. And so these are just the designations we use within the system so that we charge the correct amount of rent. So it's just our separate designation on the category, because they are not a category 2.
40% AMI right there, and 50%, 60%?
Cindy, I believe that's correct.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. And the 40% at ACI, when they turn over, they're going to 50%, because we have a lot of problems filling those. So when they refinanced, they made them all 50%. But if there's a 40% person in there, it's still classified as that until that 40%er moves out, and then we can put a 50%. So pretty soon, those 5 will be part of the 50%.
Does the AMI category make a difference in the rent?
No.
Okay.
All right, so the next part is city. So with the designation of city here, there are units that have specific city deed restrictions, and those are for city employees. With those ones, why they do not have a category designation is that they can fluctuate based on who is the current tenant or the current owner. So these 48 units, we have marked as city right now, whereas there are more than just 48 city units total that have a category designation for the rental rate purposes. And then the last two, category A and B, these are kind of two one-off categories. This was specific to the Basalt Housing Partners or Basalt Vista Housing Partners ownership units down there. Those categories fall between 2 and 3, and I believe, Cindy, was that who came up with the A and B? We had to take that from
the county, because it's not a specific, the Pitkin County worked with the town of Basalt and Habitat for Humanity, and it didn't fit into our categories exactly, so that's why we have a category A and a category B.
Quick clarification.
Yep.
So the city ones, those are all 150 funded City of Aspen properties. There are more than 48, but these are not, the other ones are included in the category, and so these are effectively the city
No.
RO units? No.
The
Explain it.
48 do not come from the 150 fund.
Oh, okay.
The 48 are the ones that comes from the employee fund, where the city charges each department a certain amount, and those are designated for city employees only.
Yeah,
It does not come from the 150 fund.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on, and if I'm going quick, please tell me to slow down.
550 fund is what I meant.
One other question on that, I'm sorry, I didn't find my hand fast enough, but, does this also then include, or we designate in any different way, the units that were created as mitigation units versus the ones that were created with public dollars?
Not specifically in this report. That would be something if a board member submitted a board request, I can pull. We do have that data within the system, but that's not specific to this report. This is just based on the category that would then go into the qualification side of it.
Okay, hey, thank you.
Yep. All right, we're going to jump on to page 6 now, and so this is units by bedroom size. Again, looking at the graph here, we can see that the majority of our units, or not the majority, the largest grouping of our units are 2-bedroom. Next would be 1-bedroom. Next would be 3-bedroom, and then fourth would be studio. Gave a percentage breakdown too, just in case you were curious on the breakdown on bedroom size. Blank, again, these are ones that we do not have data directly in the system that has the actual bedroom for it. A lot of these are, again, those one-offs. Some of these are employer-specific, so they're allowed to put their employees in it. Some clarification, SFH stands for single-family home. In this case, a single-family home is a standalone unit where the bedroom size is unknown. This could be a unit that was built where they purchased a plot of land, and then it just we don't have the bedroom size number for it in the system as of today. So we just wanted a designation to say, yes, this is a built unit. Yes, it is a single family home. Yeah, Kelly.
How are mobile homes treated?
They are either classified, if we have the bedroom count, by bedrooms or single family homes. So that's another chunk of that single family home. If we don't have the bedroom counts on those mobile homes, then they're placed into the single family home.
So those would be considered, like an entire mobile home park would be one property?
No, we'd go unit
Rather
by
than-
unit
Okay, thank you.
or address by address.
Okay.
The lot portion, these are undeveloped lots that will have future deed restricted units built on them. As of today, we only have one, and I believe, Cindy, when we talked the other day, I believe they're supposed to get their CO sometime this week, so as we will transition it out of the lot. So this is where I'm talking about that data gets updated, good data gets refined continuously. So don't take this as this is the only data APCHA will ever have on this. If you requested this in 6 months' time, if there were new units built, if we're able to clarify some of those blanks, we'll be able to update this graph for you. Storage is an interesting designation you might not have thought of for a deed restricted unit, but there are 11 music rooms over at Merle Ranch, and so we don't classify them as bedrooms, so in this case we classified them as storage. They are rentable spaces, so we do want to add them as part of our pool here, but they don't have a bedroom designation there. And then these last two, you might be wondering what's the difference studio and studio loft, and why is there only 18 here and only 1 here? Again, this comes with the clarification of data. These were ones that we brought over from our previous rental database that had a specific designation of studio loft. So we wanted to keep that designation and not lose that historical information. Same thing with our one bedroom loft. There are more units that are 1-bedroom lofts. Again, that's going to come with the rental survey that will be able to clarify which units need to be maybe redesignated from just a 1-bedroom to a 1-bedroom loft, or a studio to a studio loft.
I told Andrew I would do colored commentary for us tonight, and I just wanted to add in 2 items. One is, as you go through here and Andrew says, well, we're gonna fix that data, or that one's gonna get cleaned up or filled in. I spent 22 years in systems integration, so bringing together disparate data sets for companies. I've never seen such a clean data set. These folks spent years ahead of time working on getting good data and the database right. So it is stunning at this point. I would also encourage you, one of the things that will happen is that your eyes will get attracted to that 1 and 2, and I just say focus on the majority, but continue to ask questions, because that's way more fun than Andrew having to do a monologue.
Good color commentary.
Thanks.
I noticed that your hair has swapped to our new board member, now that you mention it. The purple has gone to Allison.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well,
All around color commentary.
It's the newbie color. Actually, I might go back because it's COVID, so again.
I liked it.
All right, we're going to move on to page 7, and this one's an interesting one. So this is a basically cross-reference graph of category and bedrooms, so that we can see, okay, we want to know how many category 1 bedrooms there are, how many 5-bedroom category 5s are there. Again, you'll see we have our blanks. This is showcasing that we have in this specific column and row, there are 24 units within the system that do not have either a category or a bedroom designation. As I go down the columns here, this is going to show me how many bedrooms per category. If I'm reading across, it's going to tell me how many category units per bedroom size. So I'll give you a little bit to look over that one. If you have any specific questions on this, this is, again, same data as you saw in the last 2 pages, but instead of it being just bedrooms or just categories, it's the combination of the 2.
You can ask.
I'm just curious, do we have a 5-bedroom category 1?
According to Home Truck, yes.
I know of a 4-bedroom category 1, but I'm not
According to
sure
Home
about
Truck.
a 5-bedroom.
But I will make a note and we'll look at it.
One of those closets is actually a bedroom.
Yeah, the nice thing about data
Uniform.
from Home Truck is it's not me making it up. This is what our system
Yeah.
says. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one, page 8. So this is a breakdown as we get into ownership types. So as we're looking here, this donut chart is just showing what is the breakdown, if you want a visual perspective, of what ownership types. And what ownership type means in the system is it an ownership unit? Is it a seasonal rental unit? We actually have a few more breakdowns than that. We have long-term rental, we have seasonal rental, we have attached ownership, detached ownership, and then ownership rental unit. Attached means shared wall, and detached is basically freestanding. So that's another way for us to, instead of writing single-family home, capture the number of bedrooms, but also capture that it is a standalone unit. And then here's that music room down at the bottom. In case you're curious of how many total rentals between long-term and seasonal we have 1,343 between long-term and seasonal. And then between attached and detached, our total ownership is 1,651. Those 102 in the ownership rental category, those are units that can be either ownership or rentals. So the owner could live there, they are the owner of the unit, or they could rent it out to an employee. Cindy, you might be able to provide a better explanation than I can on that one.
No, I think you,
Okay. All right. Any questions on this one? Data is usually pretty straightforward, so please let me know if you have questions. I'm happy to explain a little bit further. All right, on to page 9. So again, this is just 2 reports brought together. So this is looking at ownership type versus category now. So similarly, if I'm reading vertically up and down, that is going to tell me the ownership types and the numbers of ownership types in that category, or reading left to right, the number of categories in that ownership. So for example, we have 109 category 1 long-term rentals. Give you a little bit to take in that graph, because I think actually the next portion's pretty interesting to.
This is all fascinating.
It
It's
is.
so nice to have it in front of us.
Yes.
And as Andrew is kind of showing you here too, as your thing is, right, you don't necessarily, we'll be developing quarterly reports and we'll be working with the board on that. There may be things you want to see. This is traditionally called a cross tabulation or crosstab. So saying, I want to see a crosstab of this field by this field. And you can pretty much crosstab any field by any field. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. If you request, I want to see last name by category, we probably won't print out something like that, because it's just going to be one row of everything.
Yes.
However, there are lots of ways to cut it. Andrew.
Thank you. So moving down into this next section, what I did is just a little bit different graph just to show you some other ways we can look at some of the reporting here. So what this graph is a stack to 100% bar graph. And what that means is it's not taking in the total number of units in each category. It's saying if they were all stacked to 100%, here is the breakdown by the ownership type. So the color coding is the ownership type, and the actual bar graph is the category. So just as a visual representation, if you just wanted to look at category 1, it's saying the majority of category 1s are long-term rentals. Sorry, that light green and that dark green are a little hard to distinguish there. So category 1 is saying the vast majority are long-term rentals. Category 5 is saying the vast majority are attached rentals with a small portion of detached. This isn't saying there are more category 4 attached ownerships than category 5 detached ownerships. It's saying if you look at them as a separate silo, here's the breakdown in percentages of that specific category.
Understood.
All right, so the next one is actually the same exact information, but I just broke it down in a different perspective. So again, our left-hand side here is going to be the category, and then this is it for you to be able to see within those categories and make those comparisons in a visual way of what the ownership types look like. So if we look at category 3 and category 4, we can see that attached ownership, there's about 250. In category 4, attached ownership is just approaching 500. So this is, if you want to make the comparison of those ownership types between categories, this is the better graph to look at because it gives you that visual comparison. Any questions on that one? Sorry,
I was just going to say, before we jump into the owner's report, especially for you guys on Zoom, is there anyone who has questions at this point? I just want to make sure. I saw your hand on there, and I was like, that's so confusing. Kelly first, and then Francie, I see you.
Oh, what's a lodge?
So, thank you. I totally skipped over that.
I know what a lodge is. What's
that's actually going to be on my next page. Where is my lodge page? Give me 1 second.
Oh, sorry, I just saw it up here on the ownership type. Sorry.
What page are you on?
11.
one that you just went to.
Gotcha.
It's
Thank
not in
you.
the spreadsheet.
Is it projects like the Copper Horse, which is a lodge that was converted into rentals, and the Uller, which was a lodge that was converted into ownership?
I think, Kelly, you're looking at an old version, and I apologize if you
No
look up
worries.
on the that. Yes. So, Cindy, we talked about this one the other day.
Yeah.
This was which specific was listed as Euler Commons. was listed as a lodge.
Right.
And, because it was
At one point in
a lodge
time.
property at one point, and now they are separate units technically, but they're really just single rooms. And so we reclassified all those units as studios.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies on that one.
There is-
Sorry,
Sorry.
that's helpful.
There is no lodge here, it's just in the key.
Right.
Just kidding. Francie?
Just going back to the very beginning, I may have missed this. So is this all generated by Home Track, and is it in Home Track? Like, if I were to go on the Home Track site, would I find all of this?
You're watching a good video and it's better than the APCHA board.
Sarah,
Someone
we
needs
can
to
hear
be
you.
muted.
So Francine, yes, this is all data I pulled directly out of HomeTrack. It is not accessible in this format as a community user as of today. That is something we're looking at for future upgrades to the system, is how do we take this information so it can be accessible at any point in time to the community members without having to be download as a PDF, re-update it. Do we do that quarterly? So this is something we're working on, but as of today, I could go in, I can click on these links and pull this exact report for you, but it's not something you could click on this link. You have to have a internal, is what we call it, community home track license, and that's for staff.
And do know,
I see, but all of these graphics are embedded in the Home Track thing. When new data comes in, all the graphics change accordingly, and
Correct.
it's live.
Yep.
yep, and Andrew has built those reports, and when we get to building, what do you wanna see for quarterly reports? Those again will refresh, and as Andrew said, we can post those on the website as well. One of the issues with just handing a reporting tool to anybody is that they won't necessarily understand how to read the data, how to manage the data, and we'd have to hire 3 more people to do user support for report generation. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Francie?
Yeah, thanks a lot, and thank
Okay.
you, Diane.
Rachel, I couldn't tell if you had a hand up there or not.
Me, no.
Okay, great. Allison, anything from you before we move on?
Have a good time, thank you.
Okay, great.
All right.
Ownership.
Then we'll jump on to page 1213. So now we are getting into some of our ownership reports. So I'm going to just zoom out real quick. I know it's going to get really small, and I'll apologize. I'll zoom back in.
Banana falls in the desert.
So this left-hand column here is our ownership by number of years. So what this is looking at is who are current owners and how many years they have owned it. So if you wanted to see a full breakdown by each individual year, this tells you. We have had 15 owners that have owned for 15 years, 100 of them. We have people who have owned for 25 years, we have 84 of them. We have 3 owners that have, or 3 units that have been owned for 43 years. So that left-hand graph is just to showcase the breakdown by 0 to our maximum, which is currently at 43. I'm going to zoom in back to, because I think it's more helpful to look at them in groupings rather than in each individual breakdown. So this first one is in groupings of 5. And gave you some percentages here as well. What this is just showing is that majority of our units have been sold in the last really 20 years. Last 5 years, we've sold 321 units. In the last 5 to 9 years, it's been 305. So between the last 10 years, we've sold 626 units in our inventory. Again, this is only looking at the current owners based on their purchase date and how many years they've owned. This isn't taking into consideration previous owners and how many years they own. This is only looking at specifically who is an owner as of today. Similarly, if you wanted to see another breakdown, same thing. This is just in groupings of 10 rather than groupings of 5. Again, we can see the majority of our inventory has moved within the last 20 years.
Just one point of clarification. So if somebody has owned a unit for 25 years and they in-complex swap at the 26th year and they just swapped, will this show up as 1 year or 26?
It's so up as one,
Okay.
because we'd be taking their last purchase date
Understood.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. This isn't showcasing total ownership time. It is unit ownership time.
Allison, question.
Thank you, I don't know how to hit the hand raise. Is this what we're looking at now with the owner reports, are these all self-reported?
No, this is based off the purchase date we have, either based off the closing date, the sales documents we have. So this is information we had in our previous sales database that was migrated over into HomeTrack.
Thank you. Allison, just so you know, I can see everybody right now, but sometimes when the screen moves, so you just hit participants, and then from your name, when you hover, you should see the hand raise. Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Skippy. Either that or you hit the reactions little button and it has a feature there to raise your hand and lower your hand. Just kind of two comments here. First, great work, Andrew, and just fabulous information for all of us. But looking at this page in particular, it strikes me two things. You know, it's a good analysis. If you really were breaking it down further, you would find a lot of movement in years when larger projects came online. Mm-hmm. So whether it was, Burlingame 1 coming online and then a lot of turnover in units, or Burlingame 2, or a private sector project or something like that. So, when you get these fits and starts, such as the units at Burlingame 3 that are going to come online, it's kind of good to maybe have a sense of why we have so much movement sometimes in the system. I guess is the greater point there. Okay. And then secondly, I'd have a point that, if you look back on a sort of 5-year or 4-year, 8-year timing or whatever, it goes to show you how many units turn over in a kind of average sense. But to me, it demonstrates that if you get a deed restriction fixed, or you get more elements of clarity and transparency in the deed restriction, even as you go forward, without it just being new projects, you end up seeing 25 or 30% of the units turning over every 5 or 7 years, and a chance to bring those up to the standards we want without kind of invading people who aren't ready to sell yet, or as we go forward. So again, it's just fascinating to see how the turnover occurs in such a way that new deed restrictions or regulation policies can take effect on those with new owners. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think actually the next report's going to kind of get at your looking at the years and seeing the movement in those years. So the next one is not this one yet. This is still ownership age. Again, left-hand side is just going to showcase the number, or how old and how many people we have at that specific age bracket we have. We have owners from 22 all the way up to, we do have an owner who is 98. So we do have quite a breadth and depth of owners at different ages throughout our system. This breakdown here is done by 10-year brackets again. We can see our majority right now is in the 50 to 59, but it's still only about a quarter of it. The next highest slice is our age group of 40 to 49, and then our next one from there is 60 to 69. So really in that 40 to 69 age bracket is where the majority of our owners are currently. This next graph is just showing, we just use 65 as a kind of a split bracket, just so we could showcase, here's the number of owners that are over 65, and here are the number of owners that are under 65. So we are at about 75, 25, 3/4, 1/4 of under and over. So that's one question APCHA does get a lot, so it's nice to be able to say, hey, this is really our breakdown of our ownership ages right now.
And one area where this could support forecasting would be to say, given the updates to the regulations, how many people of this age have been in the unit for 10 or more years, to predict how many over the next X period of time, how many could go into retirees, for example.
Is that data right? Because if you do the math, that says there's 10% of the people are between the age 60 and 65.
Assuming there's an even distribution between that bracket, you mean?
No, I'm just saying if you add up.
Oh, you see it here. Got
60 to 100 or 60 to 90 plus, it's 34.3%. We're saying here in this graph, 65 and over is 22.7.
Well, and one thing to remember there too is this 10-year bracket is between 60 and 69. So it's,
That's what I'm saying is, you're picking up, I mean, essentially, we're losing 10% out of that, so 10% of those people are 60 to 65.
Yeah.
Got it, you're just pointing out a math.
Drew, I
Rachel,
don't
Rachel,
want
I see that.
To me,
Rachel, you
that's
can't see him, but
a
he's
large
working something
overhang
out.
of inventory that are close, nearing or close
Right.
to retirement age.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
at retirement age.
Drew, this is Rachel again. I think these are good questions. I also would like to kind of ask, do we profile the sellers in home track? And my question is kind of relating to the idea of, do we have a sense of, do people at 75 or 80 sell more often than people at 42? Or do their units turn over at a different rate than a unit just purchased by someone at 30? And so, to try to get the bigger picture, and so it's not just, oh, here's a scary number. A lot of these people are going to retire soon in their units and fulfill the community goal of having a multi-generational community. But how quickly do they move on average? Or the other question to frankly ask, and I don't know if it's something we cannot legally ask, but it may be interesting to find out how many still work part-time or full-time over the age of 65.
Thanks,
And
Rachel.
so that we kind of have an accurate picture of this demographic of our constituency. Thank you.
Rachel, it's always good for a presenter when you ask a question for which he has an answer in 3 slides.
That's why I
That's
thinking
great.
I might be premature. But do we ask how many work or still work then?
Yes.
yeah, that is part of the ownership affidavit, the biennial. So that's going to be the last portion of the report.
Rachel's first question about, I guess, percentage sales rates or people that voluntarily move on, is that in here later as well?
It is not.
It's
no.
not.
So previously it was not tracked in a way in which we could take the current seller to whoever the new purchaser is. And so we only had the birth date for the new purchaser at that point. So within the system though, that is something, we're not losing that data. It is just basically going through a new case within the system that will transition ownership records from person A to person B. So we'll still be able to maintain that.
So would I be right in understanding, or would we be right in understanding that there is no time machine where we can do a look back to get that, but from this moment going forwards, we will absolutely know the relative number based on percentage in any increment we want?
Yes, yeah, that would be a great report
And we can
request.
extrapolate, and that may or may not prove out to be true, but we can do it.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you say what you said again? I didn't understand that.
Well, it's really 12%, but 60 to 65 and over is 22.7% of the population, right?
Yes.
If you add up 60 to 90 plus, that's 34.3% of the overall owners of our units,
Yeah.
correct? So I'm just saying the 60 to 65 is 10 or 12% of that.
Equals 12%. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. All right. Good to move on, Rachel? Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to get into some sales reports. And so this, Rachel, I think might actually answer your question on as we kind of see the breakdown of when units moved. Again, this is based solely off last purchase dates. So current owners and their purchase date. Doesn't include that historical information. Left-hand side, again, gives you the breakdown by each specific year. We can see from 2021 all the way down to 1978 was the earliest purchased units that are still current owners. We do have 2 units that have not sold. These are both at the Basalt Vista. They're new units, so they don't have a previous purchase date on them. They have not closed yet at this point. So I just wanted to make sure we called out that there are 2 units without purchase dates there. And then as we jump up to purchase date by month, this is again just a breakdown based on the last purchase date of where we see when units typically have last sold.
Is there any rhyme or reason to that we're aware of?
Not that I'm aware, but it is, I think, something we can start tracking as a metric of, okay, when do our units typically move more, at least for tracking staff timing.
Yeah.
So I haven't peeked ahead a little bit, but this just prompted me to think of something. What do we know about these units that haven't really traded hands, since 1978? And then what's our maintenance? Because excuse me, that's what makes me just think about how well they've been maintained. Is that a big cost at some point that somebody here is going to incur, right? Maybe that's a good place to go start, to talk to somebody about, the new deed restriction
And Andrew can pull and can actually look that up to see what 2 units those are. And even from the ones 81 and older, he can look up and we can find out what's going on with those units.
Okay.
Yeah, and these numbers, what I've done is basically just giving you counts, not giving you, if that was a request that you wanted to see what is the breakdown of units that have last purchase date was 1990 and older, I can give you a full list of those units as well. If you wanted to see those specific units or where those properties or where those units are located at property-wise, this was just meant to be here is the unit count, just so you have an idea of where it's at within the system. So we can see the breakdown of those units and be able to find pretty easily what are those 3 units that haven't sold since 1978.
And you'll see if you read the intro, we do say in here, here's the link, the form. Andrew created a Google form where you could submit a request, and if we end up with a volume that's really starting to impact Andrew's workload, we'll come back to you and the board as a whole and work on prioritization.
Can you pull by year of construction?
If we have that data in there, it really is going to depend on the property. For a good chunk of units, we do have year built at the property level, and that's why we have both units, even if they're single units, that have a property association, because that's where we store that field. So that is one of those data cleanup portions. I can pull what I have, but it is not a complete data set right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then the second section is just talking, instead of by month, by year. So this is just breaking down, and again, 10-year spans. Where have the units moved, or when have the units moved from last purchase? So we can see in the last decade, we've had 586 of our 1,651 units sell. From 2000 to 2009, we've had 560 of our 1,651 ownership units sell. So that's over 1,000 of the units that have moved in the last 20 years.
And I'm sure that those are 2 big projects that we've done, Burlingame, South Aspen Street. Those are probably some of the newer, during those periods of time, the newer projects that came on board during those years. But Rachel's right, we can figure out some of the bigger units when they came up for sale. Those are we can provide those years to you so that you know that that's kind of what affected that huge number.
Just to jump in, I think this chart gets us pretty far along to the question I was kind of asking, and I realize that it might be information we just have to gather going forward. But again, it's kind of just a curiosity of do people sell more frequently after they've hit a certain age? Do people in the 70 plus sell more often than people who are 30 or 40? I don't know. I think it'd be impossible probably to look at, well, how many people used to have a unit in 1988 who don't anymore. That would be the wrong way to go about it. But, you see the numbers of those who've remained. You can make a little bit of an assumption that if they were at all like me and they bought their unit when they were 30, they're about 61 now, But again, it's just kind of, how do we understand the retirement question better and as opposed to just anecdotal information that I've had or others have had, people moving away to be closer to the family or to lower altitude for oxygen or passing away or whatever it is. But it just, rather than look at the number of people who are aging, who've worked in the community and given their lives to the community for a long time as somewhat liabilities in holding on to a unit. I'd like to try to reframe that a little to understand how many of their golden years they really get to spend here or do spend here. You know, what's that look like, so that we could, you know, again, use the information going forward. Thank you.
Rachel, we're going to be able to, and it's a great question, right? Because people have very different perspectives, which are really just guesses about this, to approximate and extrapolate this with hard data. And we could do that in any time frame, but we could start doing it in short order. So 3 months from now, a year from now, we can say, what are the total number of people at this age bracket versus this age bracket that have sold, and how does that relate to the overall percentage of ownership? And, you know, this year may be an aberration year, so it might not be predictive data because it's COVID, and so people moved at a different rate because of lung issues. But we'll start to get real hard data extrapolation that will start to hone us in more objectively on that. So it's great. It's a super important question to answer.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next page, page 17, and what this is a breakdown of is by unit their appreciation rate and their frequency. So the donut chart is just breaking it down in a visual format, but I think the graph is, or the table is a little bit more helpful there. So these are the appreciation rate formulas that we have within the system. You can see the vast majority of our units are on a 3% or CPI appreciation rate. The next largest grouping are NA. NA means they have no associated appreciation rate. They'll sell it what the market will bear. And a lot of these are Aspen Village, Lazy Glen, so that's where that high number is coming from. But by far and large, the largest number are on that 3% or CPI appreciation rate.
Francie, got a question. Can you guys unmute her?
Yeah.
No, she's fine.
There she is.
Is this the appreciation at the last time these units sold, or is this their controlled appreciation? I'm not quite sure what these percents.
Sure, this is the appreciation rate that is listed in their deed restriction.
This is what they have now.
22.3?
Well, that means that there's no appreciation with it.
Oh, sorry, Francine, this percentage column is just showing the breakdown.
No, that, out of,
This percentage is just showing the breakdown of that there are 23.3% of our units that are on an NA appreciation rate.
Okay. And 65% have a 3% cap.
Yeah, 3% or
CPI.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Thank you so much. Sorry, I got a little lost there for a
No
second.
worries. All right, so in the last section we're going to talk about our 2021 owner affidavits. So we are still collecting this. So this is information as of Monday when I did my last poll from our survey collection, and then pulled them into HomeTrack. So this is as of Monday. We very well could have gotten some in yesterday or today that aren't included here, but this is at about 89% of receivable rate. So jumping into the first one, one thing to note here with all of these owner affidavits, how we set up our survey response or affidavit response is that they had to fill out for owner 1. If they marked yes, there is a second owner, they also had to fill out separate information for owner 2. So how that gets brought into the system as 2 separate fields, one for owner 1's information, one for owner 2's information. What I did then is exported both owner 1 and owner 2 into an Excel, combined those into an all. So this first, in all of these sections, this is on employment status, is going to be all. So it's going to be a combination of owner 1 and owner 2, and then on the subsequent pages, there'll be the breakdown based on owner 1 or owner 2. We don't have a requirement that if I was an owner, that I have to be listed as owner 1 and my spouse has to be listed as owner 2 in 2 years. If they filled out the affidavit, they could list themselves as owner 1 and I could be listed as owner 2. That's just how we needed to be able to pull the information to make sure we're getting the breakdown of those specific owners. So as we're looking on employment status, this question was asking, what is your employment status per your deed restriction? So as we can see, majority is 80% are working, not retired, or semi-retired. This will also pertain to certain deed restrictions or certain affidavits that the restrictions isn't just Pitkin County, it might be the Roaring Fork Valley. So I did group those all together with the working. Semi, I did break those apart so you could see which ones are semi-retired but are working. Working just means in Pitkin County. The gray is semi-retired and not working in Pitkin County. Retired and not working, not currently employed and not working, and then we do have a handful of responses that were blank in terms of when they returned their affidavits. We are waiting until we have closed our affidavits before we start doing the follow-up, so you will see that I've included the blank information in there, and that is more just to call out, hey, we don't have data based on what they provided back in their affidavit response, but we do have stock of here are the ones we need to kind of follow up on based on certain questions.
Allison, question?
Okay, so this is the part that's just self-reported, and you didn't have a way of verifying, correct?
Correct. Yes, this is part of their deed restriction in responding to the biennial affidavit.
Importantly, though, this is legally binding, right? So generally, try not to get people lying on these. It's a little bit different than an average survey.
If you knew you were answering something that got you kicked out of your house, I think you might risk that over the legally binding affidavit, for instance.
True.
So Bethany, I think you're right. I think that's why we try to do random audits on the data and actually go out to those folks and ask for said documentation. We certainly don't do as many as maybe we should, but we certainly do as many as we can right now from a staffing perspective, but it's something we'll continue to work on.
I would also think this might be the most accurate year you ever get, because it's right now you can be honest about being, having less hours or being out of work, because we have had COVID pass, whereas moving forward, people might have to fudge things more.
Thanks, Allison.
I have a question.
Kelly?
How does the returns compare now that it's all part of home track rather than prior affidavits?
In regards to
Participation.
Bethany, I'll let you speak to that one.
So I think last in 2019 we were at about 94%, and this year we're just under 90%.
Thank you.
And that period, that last period was longer than this one. So they're still in a phase right now where they're going to be posting things on doors where they don't have responses.
What happens if someone just doesn't respond at all? Because we know which doors it is.
Fine schedule.
Just fine schedule.
Yeah, notice a violation.
So what? So
It's a violation, and Skippy, we can do a notice of investigation and a notice of violation. I think it comes with a $150 fine. There's about 150 maybe right now that we're waiting on. So that's certainly our next step, but our first step is compliance. And so Maddie very nicely walked Lazy Glen yesterday with, I think, Julia from our office, and posted notices on everyone's door that hadn't completed it. And we have plans to do a fair number of the other properties as well to just try to get compliance. I don't want to send anyone a notice of investigation and potentially a fine for this.
And with our updated fine schedule and the fact that things jump up the ladder now, do we anticipate that we'll capture that 6% that we didn't last time because of that change in the fine schedule?
I'm not sure. Half of what I think our issue is right now, to be perfectly honest, is a lack of contact information. We don't have a good email address. We don't have we have a mailing address, but they don't seem to respond to the mail. We might have an old mailing address. We might have an old email. And so part of what's important in the affidavit this year, just as much as these questions, in all honesty, is getting that up-to-date contact information. Yeah. Staff spends a lot of time with bounce back emails, returned mail. We are still, as of 2 months ago, we were still getting returned mail from the 2019 affidavit. So, I think we're doing the best we can.
And the last chance is to go door to door for as many of these as staff has time for.
Understood. Kelly?
Are these notifications bilingual?
That's a great question. Currently, they're not. We are already working on that for the 2021 or 2023, affidavit. So that's currently in the works.
John?
I certainly hope I filled out my affidavit, but I don't remember what the questions were. But some of this data would be interesting to then further sift through, and I'm not sure if you're going to ask these questions or not, but just retired not working, semi-retired not working, semi-retired working. Is the age of these respondents collected as well, so you can sift through that?
It's not collected directly in the survey response, but it's in home track. So we could make the cross-reference of
So it'd be
their
interesting
person
to know,
account. Yeah.
Retired not working, what that age makeup. I guess it would be, because we just saw age numbers before, but, and then cross-reference a lot of that stuff, so.
Francie?
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is able to be filled out by hand, or if it's all on computer, and if we don't get some responses because people aren't computer literate.
So we have both options. We certainly try to do electronic first, but we always, when folks call and say they'd like paper, we have paper available, and we either drop it in the mail or they come to our office. Maddie's also been great walking folks through how to complete it online. And then we do a mailing once we've given the online a couple run-throughs. We've emailed out, and we do a physical mailing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Francie.
So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the breakdown of first and second owner, that is pages 20 and 21. We're going to jump into page 22, which is the hourly employment. Again, this is just another version of a question that was posed on the affidavit. And so this is breaking down how many hours, again, in the self-reported affidavit, that they have responded to. We can see the vast majority, 77% here, have listed that they work more than 1,500 hours each year. We have a handful that mark they work, but not in Pitkin County. We have about 7% that say they work less than 1,500 hours a year. And then we have a specific one for retired and does not work. Again, we have our blanks. These are our follow-ups. Fairly large number on that one for the hourly employment.
Francie, question or old hand?
Oh,
Old
sorry.
hand. Okay, just making sure. Don't want to miss you.
And then on page 23 and 24 are again just the breakdowns by first owner and second owner. So I'm going to jump to page 25. This specific question is based around a residency question. So this one, you'll see a lot of responses, and you might think, hey, it's pretty black and white, but it is going to be based on the affidavit that we send out. We send out 4 different types of affidavit depending on the restriction. So while 93% do list their as 9 months or more per year, there are some more that are breakdowns that might start raising red flags, but per their deed restriction, they are meeting the requirements based on that affidavit response. So I tried to make some notes on the right-hand side of this table here to list which affidavits this applies to and which ones it doesn't apply to. All right, again, going to jump over 26 and 27. That's just the breakdown of first versus second owner. And if you ever want me to jump and look at one of those, please let me know. I'm happy to stop and do that, but I just, in the interest of time, I know this has been a lot of information in a small one.
It's great. Take your time.
On page 28, this is the additional property ownership question. So again, it's going to be based on their affidavit type. They basically had 2 responses. They own just that single one in either the OEZ or ownership exclusion zone or the Roaring Fork Valley, depending on their deed restriction, or they own more than one in either of those segments based on their deed restriction again. This one does have a large number of blanks here, and Bethany, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe there's one affidavit, and I'm not sure, I don't think that's right. I have to check with Bethany on whether this question was posed on one of the affidavits or not, because I think based on their deed restriction.
Wait, can you clarify?
Hey.
Go ahead. Carson.
Is this 1774 units?
Responses.
That would be.
Both first and second owner.
Okay.
Because they both had to answer this question. And I did my best to try and filter out some duplicates on here. In the system, not always easy to filter out duplicates if owner 1 fills out response 1, owner 2 fills out response 3, and then they fill out a combined response for response number 3. So I did my best to try and filter out duplicates as best as possible.
I don't understand the orange pizza pie.
So that is based on the response 1, 7%, they only own this property in the Roaring Fork Valley, and so this applies to units at Lazy Glen and Aspen Village.
So, but
Yeah,
they
what
don't.
we have to remember is, sorry, I'm just going to cut in. What we have to remember is each deed restriction is a little different, and some allow ownership of other properties in the Roaring Fork Valley or versus the ownership exclusion zone. And so really, when you combine the 7% and the 82%, that's the number that, this is the only property they own in this area that they're allowed to own.
Okay, so the orange, it's separate because it's in Lazy Glen or Aspen Village. It's not saying they own Lazy Glen or Aspen Village and another property in the OEZ?
Correct. That was just a question posed to just those specific units at those properties.
Okay. Rachel, were you trying to jump in?
Yeah, just kind of a question. It looks like this survey is all on ownership units. Do we ask people in rental units if they own other property in the ownership exclusion zone?
Good question.
So, Rachel, we look at that when we qualify them. Currently, there's no requirement besides a biennial requalification. So every 2 years, the renters have to requalify, and so that would come up at that time. We have never really done a rental survey before, and that's something that we're going to do in 2022. That's more looking at the owners of, that's going to the owners of the property and asking them for a clarification of who's in the unit. But we would catch ownership of other property when someone comes in to requalify every 2 years.
Okay, great. I think that's really helpful as well. It shouldn't be just current owners of AH units that have to comply with the ownership exclusion zone, but also renters who may be renting if they have a free market rental unit that they're renting somewhere in the OEZ.
And I can't. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say I can't speak to the frequency, but we certainly deny folks for owning rental or owning other units and trying to get into a rental inventory. So that's a common denial reason, to be honest.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
One more question. The 10% blank is it's significantly larger than any other blank. Do we have any sense of why?
And that's where I need to check with Bethany and look at the affidavit layout on one of these of the 4 separate affidavits we send.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to skip over page 29 and 30. Again, it's just the first and second additional ownership based on those owners. I'm going to jump to page 31. And so, 31. So this is one of the questions we asked this year, which is how many people live in your unit? So we did a crosstab to look at how many occupants versus how many bedrooms for that specific respondent's unit. So the top portion is, again, just a stacked 100%, just so we can kind of see the breakdown in a silo of the bedrooms, the number of occupants are the silos, and the colored segments are the bedrooms. So if we look at the lot, there's only one. They have 5 people living, or that will be living in that. They did respond to this affidavit because they do own technically a unit, even though it doesn't have its CO yet. But if we look at how many people live in your unit, and they said 1, we can see that it's mostly 1 bedrooms in that stacked 100%. The next biggest grouping is 2 bedrooms. I think this table speaks a little bit better to that information, and with the help of Diane, thanks Diane on this one, she helped highlight and said, hey, this would be great to show the board. That kind of tan color portion is units that are what we would call underutilized, because they say in a 2-bedroom, there are 118 units that only have 1 occupant. In a 3-bedroom, there's 110 units that only have 2 occupants. Now, this could be for a variety of reasons. This could be they had dependents that have moved out since. They're still the owner. They don't have to give up their ownership just because their dependents have moved out. It's based on time of qualifying. It could also be that at that point in time in the lottery, if there were only 10 people for a 2-bedroom, and person number 10 was a single person, and 1 through 9 either couldn't qualify or passed on the unit for whatever reason, that single person could have gotten a multi-bedroom unit if they were the last person on the list and they qualified and, you know, met the other requirements around years. There's also the possibility that it could be there were 2 people who were married and they, you know, either split or there was a death in the family, something like that. So these numbers aren't meant to say these are because they are specifically underutilizing their units when they purchased it. It could be a variety of reasons, but we just wanted to call out these are some of the numbers that we're seeing based on this report in terms of number of bedrooms and then first number of occupants.
And one of the things that Cindy and Bethany have been working on is with our communications company, Slate Communications, is a flyer that we're going to send out that says, hey, did you know you could rent a room as an owner, and here's how you would do it. So I just realized I have to review the draft of that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's self-evident, but when we have our right sizing discussion, you know, we have a clear opportunities owner population to say, hey, would you ever have any interest in changing your living, and if so, what would you want, right? Yeah, which is great. It's over 300 units,
Yeah.
and these are the ones that are very significantly underoccupied. There's others that are also.
Well, this would also be an interesting, if you're, way to cross tab with age, you know.
Yeah, put that in that Google Doc.
Yeah.
Before I go on, Diane, I'm going to check real quick. I know I'm technically over my slotted time. I do have a few.
Yeah, I think you're okay to go a few more.
Okay,
We
all right.
figured it might be an hour, so.
Just wanted to double
Yeah,
check. I know this
we've
is
got till
taking up a
7.
lot
No,
of time.
this is great. I mean, this informs everything that we do, and like everything else, if it goes longer, we can have the next thing with the next thing.
Excellent. Any other questions on page 31 here? All right, I'm going to jump to page 32. So this is, again, what I did here with retired occupancy is I pulled only responses, or I filtered only responses, affidavit responses that were either retired, semi-retired, 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 out of those different affidavit responses. So this was just to give us a holistic view of here are the owners who self-reported as either retired or semi-retired in their ownership unit. And then page 33 and 34 are again the breakdown based on first owner or second owner. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to page 35. This one is another question we asked on this year's affidavit by do you have dependents, and if so, how many dependents? So this breakdown is just a number of units by bedroom who have dependents. This isn't listing how many dependents, this is just saying there are 14 one-bedrooms that marked, yes, I have a dependent in my unit, or that's how they listed on their affidavit. Next page we'll talk about breakdown of how many, but this is just saying these are the units or the bedroom sizes and how many of those said that they have dependents within their units. Okay, jumping on to 36. So this is number of dependents by bedroom. I'm going to start with the table down here just to give some explanation. What this is saying in this first section 9 is saying there are 9 one-bedrooms that listed they have 1 dependent. There are 4 one-bedrooms that listed they have 2 dependents. There is one bedroom who marked that they have 5 dependents in their unit. Again, this is all self-reported, so this is what I took directly from their survey response, brought it into HomeTrack, and then was able to do a cross-tab graph on this.
Again, we don't have a maximum occupancy.
Correct.
We have a
Right.
minimum occupancy.
Maybe that's a divorced household too, where they split time between places and you just don't know. But.
Right, and I can't speak to how they responded to the question. This is just the data they provided to us. What this is showing again is just showing that there were basically 300, or were exactly 300 3 bedrooms that listed they have dependents. And then this is the breakdown of how many that listed 1 dependent, how many 3 bedrooms listed 2 dependents in the orange, and the small gray is 3 dependents, and then 4 and 5 in the yellow and blue. Francine, did you have a question?
I do. I'm wondering about on the list of the 5 bedrooms that have like 2 dependents. So if you have 4 occupants, does that qualify you automatically for a 5 bedroom?
Not in a top priority,
4 people.
but as long as you're meeting the year requirements, you're working in Pitkin County, you could qualify for it, but it's not going to put you at the top priority. So it's very possible that they might have been number 15 on the list out of 15 applicants, and 1 through 14 passed or didn't qualify, so the unit came to them.
And their household could have changed over time as well. Because that could be somebody who's owned for a long time.
So they could qualify for a 5 bedroom, and then they get older and their kids go away, and they don't have to give up their 5 bedroom.
Correct.
Correct.
Or like there's an RO that's been for sale for a long time. Like,
And a single person could get that.
yeah, a
Yes.
single person could buy that RO if they wanted to,
Because there's
Okay.
no other buyers.
because nobody else would buy it, yeah.
It's a 1 bedroom.
Oh,
That's why. At the single family home,
it's a single family home, 1 bedroom. Where is that?
the North 40.
All right, going to jump on to page
Oh, that is-
37,
that is.
and this is my last one for today. And then this is just a breakdown of tenants and roommates. So that was a separate question versus dependents. So this was, okay, you don't have dependents. Are you utilizing an additional bedroom? Maybe they said there are 3 people living in their unit, but they said they have no dependents. What is the breakdown then? Do they have roommates? So this is just showing that there are 1, 2 bedrooms who listed that they marked, yes, I have a roommate, but then said they didn't have any. So again, follow up on that particular one. But there were 16 1-bedrooms who listed they have a roommate. And then similar to the other one, this is just a stacked graph just to see the breakdown by tenants' roommates. And from there, that was my last page. So I know I'm over by about 12 minutes, but I'm happy to answer some questions, clarifications, or any
Questions. Francie, did you have one?
Oh, God.
Nope. Okay.
Bad,
Megan,
bad
Shay.
thing.
I'm looking down the list here. Allison.
So bad.
That's that last slide. So the tenant could be taking up 100% of that house for, if they have a 1-year exception or something. Is that correct?
Yes, if they were on a leave of absence, they could be marking that they have 1 tenant in a 1-bedroom because they're on a leave of absence and renting it out.
Thank you.
Rachel.
Thank you. Not so much a question on this, but a bit of an observation. And maybe we need to do some research into what are the implications for an owner to be renting a room. And, primarily I'm thinking of tax implications. Reporting the income, do they have to depreciate the unit because they're renting? What sort of complications or unknowns, perhaps, that would concern a potential owner, and we would need to walk them through those implications to try to entice more to renting vacant rooms. So that's kind of the one thing to bring up is like, what if you were on an owner's side and you're trying to look at your own personal finances and how does this affect me over the long term? I think that would be well worth understanding. So when we ask people, hey, you can rent your room, if we could also answer their questions about, well, what does this mean for how do I report that income? Do I have to start depreciating my unit? Will it affect my capital gains later? All sorts of things like that are just, unknowns keep people from action, I guess, it would be my point. Thank you.
Rachel, we may be able to figure out how to answer some high-level questions, but just like when somebody sells open space to a city, being really careful about staff providing tax advice, because people's tax situations can be so different. But your point is well taken, though, is that we may be able to develop a short list of what are some things to look at, where do I go, where are my resources?
Technically.
Yeah, just pointing people in the right direction. I mean, and, having spoken with someone not long ago with some vacant seats, the comment was, I just don't want anyone else in my house until I know what's going on with COVID. I'd be happy to have the income, but I can't have someone who's not protecting themselves bringing COVID into my house. So, I think we're seeing some concerns there over this past 18 months.
John?
I was gonna say, technically, based upon the rules to rent, let's say you rent a bedroom, you have to, your mortgage payments take into account, and essentially it's broken up by bedroom, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't really make that much of an
So
income.
there's no gain.
You can make $50
so there's
a
no real
month.
taxable event, and
Yeah.
to choose whether you depreciate your asset or not, you'd have to recapture it at some point when you sold it, but I don't think there's a real taxable implication on that, Rachel. Just kind of high level thinking about it.
Yeah.
Unless you have
No,
more
I'd just like to, I'd like to be able to answer the question. Do they need to report it as taxable income? All sorts of things like that.
Well, your offset would be on your Schedule E.
Yeah,
The expenses.
you have some deductions.
I think you guys are proving my point.
Uh-huh. All right. Anything else, Rachel?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, Francie, anything else before we move on? Kelly, John, Carson, anything else?
I just sort of wanna take a moment here. I mean, this is like the $1.4 million report. Bravo. I mean, this is sort of the first presentation of like everything that you guys have built over the last 2.5, 3 years. So, applause to you all, and thanks for your endurance. I know it's been a lot, and this is super exciting.
100%. Allison.
Yeah, one other comment, back up with our kind of housing stock. First of all, I agree with Kelly, and this is really, really fun to have at our fingertips. So like on page 8, for instance, when we're looking at our categories by bedroom and size, do we then have a plan to take some of the other surveys we do, or the regional housing study where we know what people are looking for? That this many people are looking for 3-bedroom rentals, that this many people are looking for 2-bedroom ownership. There's a lot of these columns that have zeros. We're not providing that asset for our community, but that doesn't mean much to me without knowing if our community wants that asset. So I think an overlay like that, or some sort of kind of forward planning where we're taking that stock along with sentiment and doing some planning there.
Thanks, Allison.
Do you want to address Cindy? Because it's a really good point, Allison, and Cindy actually does use knowledge to help developers in the what should we build, what do we need, and whether that developer be the city or a private developer. Because it's really important, what does the community want and need?
We also have a lot of information that's of how many people, which we can eventually provide too, is how many bidders we have for each type of unit. So then you can kind of tell, oh my gosh, we have 200 people who want a 2-bedroom category 3 unit, and we have 5 people who are bidding on a category 5 2-bedroom unit. So you can we do have that information as well that we can provide too. We do have that in our sales activity, and it's something that we are amassing now in our home trek system as well.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Carson, did you want to?
No, I think, so if you look at this slide on 31, that indicates there's 3,100 people in ownership units, which is, it's more than I thought there would be.
Yeah. This is a big deal. spectacular, right? I mean, this really takes us from mysticism to science, and I just want to say an extra special thank you to, I mean, John and Carson, you guys were on the board that really pushed for this when it was not easy. Cindy and staff, you guys have been around for way before this, but this was a big push. Former executive director Mike Kudrowski really pushed this. You know, former city council before my time, Ann Mullins and Adam Frisch and Steve Skadron. You know, when this looked like it was taking forever, they continued to put funds into this. And this is going to completely change the way we are able to respond to the needs of the community. And this is just awesome. So like a very specific thank you to all of you guys. Yeah.
And the county sure kept pushing too.
Sorry, I wasn't there. I was the guy on the sidelines. I said all the things I knew. Thank you, Rachel, for editing. Francie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a similar thing to that, Skippy, and I wanted to thank the staff. They are so incredible at what they do. It's the guy coming in is so damn lucky he is. No how lucky he is.
That's great.
And Allison, I gotta say, you're pretty darn lucky too, because when I came on this board, there was nothing like this. And I was just like, how many units do we have? What are they? What are the rules? It was so overwhelming for me at first. It's still a little overwhelming for me. But this is just incredible what you guys have done. Hats off to you. You are spectacular. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, and to throw that
I was
appreciation.
just waiting till this was available.
I was going to say, maybe it might have been the watchful eye of some reporters in the press asking hard questions that somehow gave rise to this.
I'm ready now.
Any last questions on this before we move on for staff? Okay. I have just one last question. This Google Doc that's there is an awesome resource. I think it's really important that whatever goes in, that all the board gets to share equal information. So what's our plan for whatever comes out of that and how they distribute it to board members?
I think it's going to depend on the what, right? And right, we're not keeping any of this secret. It's just a matter of, do we want to present it at a board meeting? Do we want to just email it out to everybody? Are we getting to the, do we have so many requests that it starts to be spamish? So we'll kind of play that by ear.
Okay.
It's funny because I was just doing some minor edits to Andrew's cover last night, and I almost wrote that in, and I was like, we will share it with everybody. It's a really good point.
Okay, great.
So that should be a big worry. Is it coming from a bank where you've got 500 people and you have access to limitless data on things? You got to be careful how many reports you decide to generate too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we are not producing reports on individual data. End of story.
Right. Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
So
And
you'll circle back.
and Andrew's got rehearsal, right?
Yes, I do.
I can't remember. Is it
Yes.
theater or band?
Theater tonight.
Okay.
Awesome.
Wow.
Thank you.
Break leg.
Thank you.
Kelly's just running up to get a charger. Does anybody need a halfway through bathroom break or anything?
Always.
Yeah. All right. Let's just take a 5-minute break. Grab a bite of food. Go to the restroom, and then we will come back for, strangely enough, executive director's comments. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That's so awesome. Like, seriously. Rachel, I don't know if you can hear us or if we're on mute, but we are back on whenever you're ready to come back. Next on our agenda, saving battery here, our executive director and staff's comments. So Diane or staff, feel free to take it away.
I'm just trying to figure out, is work plan separate on this agenda? Or, I have no updates today for the first time ever.
Yeah, nothing. Great.
Mm-hmm.
There's Rachel. Okay, great. So we will close executive director and staff comments, and we will move down in our agenda to the consent calendar. Rachel, just so you know, I don't know if you could hear us while you were walking around, but there are no executive director comments, so you did not miss anything. So we're moving to the consent calendar. It's just the minutes of September 1st, 2021 regular meeting, and I would entertain either a motion to approve or any suggested changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September 1st.
Second.
I'll second.
Great. We got a first from Kelly and a second from Rachel. Cindy, would you read the roll?
Yes. John,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
Allison,
I will abstain since I was not there.
okay, Rachel,
Yes.
and Kelly.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's Allison's kind of first vote. That's great. Congrats. Great, so we will close that portion of the meeting and we will move into elections. So for those watching, on an annual basis, the APCHA board chooses its own officer positions. There are 3 of these positions: treasurer, vice chair, and chair, and it self-elects those positions. One question I did want to ask, because it come up in talking to a board member, is just, do you guys have a preference on how this is done? If the votes are tallied by voice vote or if they're written and given to staff? Does anyone have any preference on that?
I'm okay with voice vote.
I'll own it.
Great, okay. Just wanted to do a check-in to make sure everyone feels comfortable. Great, so we have 3 positions. I guess we'll start at treasurer. And I would ask for any nominations for this position. And perhaps if staff could just give a very brief overview for anyone new. I know the treasurer hasn't been an active position, but the responsibilities of.
And there really isn't a whole lot that the treasurer does. The treasurer used to sit in on the Mesirow Finance Committee meetings on a yearly basis. When the city went under a new management or a new agreement with the MAA, it's actually all that information was added to that management agreement. So that yearly meeting with the MAA and finance and our board member no longer has to take place. So I think basically what that person does is, if the chair isn't here, then the vice chair takes over. If the vice chair isn't here, the treasurer takes over. So right now, that's kind of more of what that position is.
Understood. Thank you, Cindy. So look for any nominations or requests to serve.
It's an easy position.
I'll serve with that position.
All right.
John.
All right.
I would nominate John Ward.
I'll second.
Awesome. Anybody else like to challenge John Ward for this position? Seeing none, I guess we just take a vote. And, point of
vote for
clarification, do alternates vote for officers or not?
I don't know. Tom, do you know?
Tom,
are you
Want
there?
me to comment?
please.
You want me to comment on this?
Please.
Voting on the officers is the same as voting on the any other matter in front of the board.
Okay.
So, those members who constitute the quorum are the ones who vote.
Beautiful. Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Great.
So I guess raise your hand if you support John.
So it looks like all the people.
Skippy,
who can
don't we still have to do roll calls?
Yep.
Or voice
And that's
vote, yeah.
fine.
Oh, we do have to do
Yeah,
voice vote. You're right. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
Roll
Cindy?
call is standard procedure.
got it.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
for COVID on everything.
Okay, so Allison,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, one down.
Congratulations.
So moving into the vice chair position.
Skippy, quick comment, just so you know, I pulled up the IGA. The IGA does specify the roles of the officer. Cindy described it
Yep.
absolutely correctly. And then my computer went to the blue screen of death. So
That's okay.
I don't have that for you, but I did want you to know that the officers are specifically defined in the IGA.
Beautiful.
Unhappy blue screen.
Thank you. And I think we have a
Happy blue
collective
screen.
sense of what chair and vice chair do. It's just the
Cool.
treasurer was a little bit murky. Rachel?
Thank you. I just was wondering, I think you and Carson have been a very good team this year. I don't know if Carson is interested in stepping up to chair and you rotating down, or whether you're both perfectly satisfied with the situation as it is. But I would be happy to nominate both of you again for your roles if you're both willing to continue.
Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that. Carson, I'll turn it over to you. You've been an awesome vice chair.
Yeah, I mean, I am. Yeah, it sounds. I mean, I'm happy to. I think we've made some progress. I'm happy to. I'm here to serve and do whatever the board wants. So if that's keep our roles, fine. If that's switch, fine. I'm happy with whatever the board decides.
Thank you.
So I think Skippy's done a great job as chairman. I would like to see a citizen in that role. And so I was coming here tonight without talking to Carson to nominate him to be chairman. And I'm fine with flipping the roles. That's how I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I had actually reached out to Carson before any of this conversation to ask him, because for me, it's the same. I think what I've really enjoyed is being able to do the background work with staff on a weekly basis to put forth a set of questions and a sequence of questions that can really move things forward. And I see no reason that I can't continue to do such from a co-chair role. Francie?
Yeah, I don't get to vote, but I would like to say that I think Skippy has done a great job. I really appreciate his youthful approach to the whole issue and his perspective on the world as a younger person. And also his leadership, I think, has been pretty dynamic. So if I were going to vote, I would love to see Skippy continue as the chair.
Thanks, Francie. I guess I'll just open it to discussion. I'm actually completely agnostic on this, as long as I get to continue to put in the time to serve us. My title certainly doesn't matter to me. And I think Carson and I have already talked about this, and he would do a great job in that role. And I don't get to vote anyways, so y'all can talk about it.
Why not? Oh, yeah.
Because I'm an alternate.
That's right.
That's
Sorry.
right.
You should vote on each position. You should vote on each position separately.
Sure.
I'll just add that I have heard John Ward's comment from others. There's been a little bit of back and forth with folks about whether there should be government on this board at all, or whether, the APCHA could somehow be independently funded of the city and the county's money to make that change. But people have pointed out to me that it would be nice to see someone who was not government as chair. And this is just me, but I always liked when, I was mayor and working with a mayor pro tem or something, to try to have both of the two leadership in the meeting with staff, because that way you both know what's going on and two brains are better than one. And I wouldn't see whoever is chair or whoever's vice chair as the vice chair being excluded from any of that work. And when you can have joint meetings with staff, it's even better.
No, that's precisely right, Rachel, and that's exactly what we've done for the last year. Carson's been on every email and all the meetings.
What do you want to just vote?
Well, yeah. Let's do
There's
the.
a motion on the table that's not been seconded. Rachel, do you want to withdraw your motion?
I didn't really make it as a motion. I was just talking,
John
but
nominate Carson for
somebody
chair?
else make a motion.
John, you want to make a motion?
I did nominate Carson
Okay.
for chair. I didn't get a second. Maybe it was unclear how I nominated, but I nominate Carson for the chairman of the APCHA board.
Is there a
Is
second?
there a second?
second that.
Oh, wow, it's gonna die.
Allison
second
said
that.
second, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so do a voice vote?
Okay, so we're ready, go ahead, and are there any comments?
Yeah, I think the question would be, are there any other nominations?
So,
And if not, I'd move to close nominations.
great. So just asking, is there any other nominations at this point?
And I'll second Rachel's motion to close nominations.
Great.
So
Cindy?
we're doing roll call vote, okay,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
Great.
And by the way, I know how hard it is to be chair, Skippy, and I think I was terrible at it, and I think you did a wonderful job for the last year or however long it's been, because we have got a lot of stuff done, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the nomination a year ago, which was yours. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. It's been a lot of work, but it's been really
Well,
fun.
they ended.
It's been really fun.
I have another nomination.
All right, so we'll open up nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Skippy to serve as vice chair of the APCHA board.
I'll second.
Second.
Any other nominations?
I would vote to close nominations.
A second for that?
Second.
Great. Cindy?
Okay. Kelly,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Small point of order. Do I get to close this part of
That
the
just
meeting?
closed nominations.
Yeah, we still have to vote on each position.
We did.
We did.
Everything has been voted on,
No.
Tom.
Not that last one. The
No,
last one was
not
just a motion to close nominations.
Correct, in both
Oh.
cases.
No.
That's the way I heard it, and I think that's what the record should reflect.
All
So,
right. Let's just go around the
Vote-
horn again
vote
for
To me,
safety.
it was
but-
the actual vote, but I'll do it again.
Let's do it again for safety.
Okay, Kelly,
So what are we
So
voting
this is
on?
for Skippy as chair.
Vice chair.
Vice chair.
Vice chair.
Skippy is vice chair.
Okay, Kelly,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
and Allison.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. So now my question is, do I continue for this meeting, or do Carson and I swap over leading this meeting now? Tom,
Tom?
maybe.
Tom,
Maybe it's a
you
Tom
know.
question.
This is the awkward
I
moment.
believe you
by the way.
continue.
Typically what I have seen is that once the vote has been taken, that the newly elected chair takes that position immediately. And I
Perfect.
think that's standard procedure.
Beautiful. Then what I'm going to do, and this is very timely because my computer was about to die. Carson, I just copied and pasted my notes of the sequence of meetings, questions, etc., into a text to you. So if you need that, you got it. And if not, then no sweat.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
If you need to
Hey,
move.
before we move on, I also want to take a chance to thank Skippy for this last year. Everyone's made it in their comments, but I think we all owe him a nice round of applause.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Rachel. All right.
All right. So with that, we move to the next item on the agenda, which is the 2022 budget presentation. What is new
Can you put
and
that up?
different in the 2022 work plan?
They're just pulling that up.
Yeah. So, just to let everybody know, with right now, the only budgets that we have brought forward are the 620, which is the Housing Administration Fund, and the 622 fund, which is Smuggler Mountain Apartments, which the board owns. So it's those two budgets that we brought through for you to look at. There hasn't been a lot of change in the 620 budget, except for we are asking for an additional position And then we're also moving forward with, I can't remember, the grant. research-
Contract funds for the grant position.
Which would be a contract position, yes, yeah. So those are the only two additional items that we have in the 620 fund. When you look, the main thing that both the city and the county look at is the supplemental request. In 2022, what that supplemental request is being asked is $309,400 from both the city and the county. And it actually went down from 2021. I wish I could tell you why.
I wish you could tell me why too.
I
Right,
think,
more home track was done.
yes, I would agree, that has a lot to do with it, is, home track. We do have we do have annual costs on that, again, that we're trying to see if we can, at least whittle those down, and hopefully sometime next year we'll be able to do that. When you are looking at the long-range plan, you do see, though, the supplemental rising from, in 23, 24, 25. Some of it also has to do with sales revenue. And because we're selling Burlingame Phase 3 next year, the Housing Authority gets a 2% sales fee for each sale. So our revenue will go up by quite a bit next year. That's also one of the reasons why the supplemental has gone down, because our revenue will be going up quite a bit as well. So that's the basic cause for that as well. So any questions on the 620 fund?
A quick comment on the, so there is, the one position that we've talked to you about that is the policy and data analyst. The city is proposing to pay 100% for that. It will be likely a position that reports, this is not all set in stone. It's likely a position that will report to me in my role as assistant city manager. And it will, that role, the person in that role will work also on city housing issues, but it's policy issues, but we'll also be working with APCHA on the types of things such as developing the seller standards and capital repairs programs. We do have some thoughts on when we get into the HOA capital reserves. We think we're gonna need another staff person then, but we didn't put that in this year. And so we likely will not be asking the county to partially fund that position, to fund it half of it. The contract role for grants that the board requested, that is a $100,000 request. And where we got to was the most effective way to do that would to do it as a contract, so we understand, so we can hire someone who's going to be good at that from the start and not have to learn the job from scratch. As well as, we don't know if it's a position we're gonna want long-term. And that's something the board's gonna weigh in on. I did wanna let you know that we have pulled back on the role that we defined for home inspections and capital repairs. And if we need to do that mid-year, we can go to the city and ask for a supplemental request. I don't know what the process is through the county, but we just felt like that we're not really far enough along in that program to hire a body.
What about just for home inspections? Where does that live?
That's going to be outside people. Cindy's been working on that. It is going to be additional work for staff, but we're hoping that initially we can absorb some of that and,
well, it's just more the fees we'd be paying for an inspector, right? 'Cause we're
correct. Actually, we're absorbing that in the current budget,
okay.
Is the anticipation. Yes, thank you, sorry.
And then with the if there's no more questions on 620?
No, just if I could comment.
Mhm.
I appreciate all the clarification, because this will come obviously to the county, and thank you for carrying forward that position. I think it could take some different shapes, so I appreciate
One more thing I should mention for the board, sorry. As Cindy mentioned, we are still working on reducing home track costs. Our proof of concept project that we spent $23,000 this year with revision was very successful. We are doing some work, though, on the front-end security, because it would be in WordPress, and there may be some security issues. We did not think we were going to be able to implement that by the end of the calendar year, so we're taking the extra time to do that research. And in the meantime, Andrew did some work on looking at our current licensing. We may be able to trim some of our current licenses for the community portal. That's where we spend $82,000. We may be able to trim some of that even in '22, but it's de minimis compared to what we're looking to do, getting rid of them completely, which we're hoping to do in '23.
So looking at 21, we've got a transfer to the 632 fund. Are we anticipating a sale of?
Well, what the
The
transfer
983?
was for the purchase of 53 Forge Road.
Okay. But wouldn't that go into the revenue section?
It will, I see that in revenues.
And then forecasting a negative would be to transfer those funds back.
Right.
Is that in the $1.6 million foreclosure purchased units?
I totally saw that in revenues. Where do you see that in?
I was looking at the 2021 forecast as a transfers out.
Revenues and transfers, where are my transfers out? And that's exactly what that was. They transferred that, and so that, right now, that was transferred out, because that was paid out.
Okay.
And we're talking about that later, but we're still hoping that possibly
Pull
we,
it back in.
yeah, before the end of the year.
Okay.
Anything else on 620? And then the next one is the 622 Smuggler. There's 11 units there. They are all Category 1 units, and they're always full. We do have a nice cash balance that we can work with on that. We have seen some turnover of a couple of units that have been rented to the same person for a very, very, very long period of time. So we're doing a massive remodel of these units, flooring, some appliances, electrical, all this other stuff. So it's costing us a little bit more. Right now, it's within budget. If I feel that I need to request a supplemental, I'll come back. But it's just during turnover that we do these major repairs and painting and making sure that it's a safe unit, and upgrading it a little bit. And then what we'll do is we're working on finalizing all the budgets, and then we will bring those back at a later meeting, probably either late October, first part of November.
No big lawnmowers or anything in the capital?
Not right now. And then the next thing is the work plan.
Cindy, one question. I realize we probably haven't really closed out 2021 yet, but how close do you think we're matching the 2021 budget?
Pretty closely. I mean, I haven't seen any, I haven't seen anything outstanding, or they usually, for one thing, finance usually lets us know. We do get monthly reports. I do check that. So we're pretty much within budget right now.
Okay, thank you.
Work plan?
Sorry.
That's okay.
am I able to, oh, thank you, that's easier. Can you just shrink that a tiny little bit or go to full screen, either one? You got it, great. The only change between the last version and this version, and as I remember, Skippy wanted us to bring it back for consent on this. This does not require a vote per the IGA. It's just making sure the board's okay with it. I did put a line through hire a staffer to do home inspections and capital, to manage home inspections and capital repairs, just as more as a reminder that we're gonna have to come back to that one. And the other change was going from monthly to quarterly reports. Because we don't have 100 sales a month, the data doesn't change that frequently. I do expect, though, that we'll be supplementing those quarterly reports with a data request. Thank you.
All right.
So
great.
do you want to ask if there are any questions or concerns with the board?
Yeah, any questions on the work plan? Skippy, Kelly?
Not a question, but just in the home track, I think we could just for the public consumption add a second outcome, which is just evidence-based policy, right? This is going to make our decision-making process far more objective, and that's a big plus.
Are you going to make me change my slides with the city one more time?
It's just before it goes to the public, we'll just yeah, no, but I think that's a huge one, right? I mean, what we just saw is going to dramatically help us with better information and more evidence-based policy, and I think that's an important thing to live wherever the community sees it for the next year.
The board would like that. I am making the change right now.
Sorry, I could type it for you. I'd come over there. No worries.
Kelly?
Can you remind me, in the IGA, does the city and county separately adopt this?
They don't actually adopt the work plan. Okay. And in fact, in the budget presentations, we're only doing highlights of the work plan. Mm-hmm. And the IGA does not require any, it's just the budget.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other comments, we will move to the Board of Directors' comments. Kelly.
I just wanted to note, so you made me think of it, Diane, when you were talking about the policy analyst. The county has approved a supplemental to hire a housing person that will be, we're calling them a resiliency coordinator, because they'll also work on other things like possibly economic development, childcare. But housing is a big focus, and they'll live in the manager's office, and our hopes for that person is to kind of help with the regional recovery effort that's happening, and also be poised to like draw down the very large sums of housing development money that is coming from the feds through the state. So I, hope once we get that person hired, that they'll be somewhat engaged tangentially with APCHA work, but get to know all of you and collaborate with the city, which I feel like our collaborations have just gotten better and better over the years. I wanted to tell that. And then for anyone who hasn't, I don't know, would know or wouldn't know, the first units at Burlingame 3 are up. So it's very exciting. You kind of drive in and they're like right there, and they were these modular units developed, all kind of shrink wrapped, and now they're in place, and it's coming together, so it's exciting.
Cool. Great. Any other comments?
No comments.
Rachel?
Thank you. I had a little time to chat with Diane earlier this week, and it's just a concept to throw out to either you as chair or Skippy as vice chair or Diane. But I think that it would be good at each one of our regular meetings to, because this is a public forum and we're broadcast now, to mention what units are available for sale and the deadlines to get in on those, and whether or not we have any rentals. We know a lot of people look on the website to find what's happening every week, but we do no longer advertise that in the newspapers. And I think we should use this public forum to at least mention which units are available for sale and what the deadlines are to get your name and qualifications into a lottery. So just a suggestion for you guys to consider, and Carson, you in your new role as chair, it'd be just something to pass along. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
I wonder if GrassRoots can just have a ticker at the bottom of the screen going all the time.
That'd be cool. And then Rachel, maybe I'll take a moment to sort of summarize the conversation that you organized for us.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I think Rachel, she may have mentioned it at the last meeting, but so a woman named Meredith Daniel, who serves on the County Senior Services Board, reached out to Rachel, trying to find more information and just, also share information that she's sort of learned in her experience working, volunteering on that board, to talk about senior housing issues in the Valley. And, I won't go into a lot of detail, but we had about a 45-minute conversation and covered a lot of ground, I think, about, questions I think seniors have, and then also ways that we could be dialoguing with the senior citizens community about kind of what can their incomes handle, how do their assets affect their qualifications, what would motivate them to, size down, things like that. And so I really saw it as like the beginning of what I hope is a continuous conversation and just a closer partnership to, with the senior community. And Meredith is a great contact. And when she interviewed for the board in front of the BOCC to be appointed that board, she had said this was one of her issues. And, she's had, has some different insights with like trying to house her mother and just things like that. So I thought it was a great conversation. Thanks, Rachel, for including me in it. And I look forward to that ongoing.
Yeah, just to add on a thing or two, the state has been involved in a really large effort to talk about the senior community and their needs going forward. So the work comes from the Senior Council to begin, how do we support these 7 pillars of aging, of successful aging, as it were, and housing is one of the 7 pillars. And so we're starting off of the Northwest Council of Governments report on senior population aging and issues like that. But the real dynamic is that Colorado's population as a whole is aging, and pretty soon, if not already, we've reached a point where 1 out of 5 citizens is over 65. And the challenge there affects us all in lots of ways, but from a state demographer point of view, it really affects the economy of the state, because as people go into retirement living, they generally try to cut their expenditures or have to cut their expenditures back by 25, 30%. So the state's kind of looking at sales tax going down from that. But anyhow, that's where this is coming from. It's a very active board with the Senior Council, and they're investigating all these other areas as well, healthcare, nutrition, and things like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other comments? Skippy.
Yeah, I just want to do a quick welcome to Allison as our new board member. I don't know how many of you guys know her or not. Kelly certainly did, but for our community, for you, Carson, John, and Dave, who didn't get to see her interview, Allison covered the APCHA board. So other than, Cindy and some staff, she's probably been through more APCHA meetings than anybody, myself certainly included. And her command of knowledge was exceptional. And, for me, I still feel 2 years in like I'm getting caught up, but to have a new board member come in with so much knowledge, clearly demonstrated passion, and the lived experience through the APCHA process, I think is really invaluable. And so I just wanted to fill everyone in on what we got to see in the interview and just say welcome.
Yep, welcome.
Thanks, Skippy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just second
Good thing
that.
I'm digital today, so my little tears are small and my eyeballs can't see, but that was a very nice introduction, and I couldn't be more proud to serve on any board in town. So thank you all for letting me come aboard.
Absolutely, and I talked to Allison earlier, and she asked me, one of the things she asked me was if I had any tips, and I said, please don't be quiet, speak up. Mm-hmm. And so thank you for doing that tonight.
You get one meeting with me having a hoarse voice and staying quiet, and that's all you get. I'll be, much louder from now on. So that was your one pass.
Great. if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session.
I will motion to move into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024A to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest and pertaining to the property at 53 Forge Road.
I will second.
All right, first and a second, John and Kelly with a second. Cindy, please read the.
Okay. Rachel? Yes?
She said it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Allison?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Carson?
Yes. All right.
Can we have a couple of minutes so that
Hey,
they
now,
can shut
what's
down?
the process?
Just stay
Okay,
there.
so we just stay on
Yes.
and you'll take care of it?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.